Hello, my name is Dr. Nick Bowman. I'm an Associate Professor of Journalism and Creative Media at Texas Tech University. On behalf of my team, Dr. Justin Keene and Dr. Christina Jimenez Najera, we appreciate y'all joining us today. I'm going to give a very brief overview of our Chi 21 manuscript. Flow encourages task focus, but frustration drives task switching. We're published open access in the proceedings. Our data and our materials are made freely available through the link on your screen. Our research had one very simple question. How are the perceived demands of a video game related to the flow experiences of the player? And when I say demands, what I'm talking about is the notion that video games require active user engagement, but remember that users have a limited capacity to process all this information. And we get cognitive demands, we got to solve the puzzle. Emotional demands, we got to sort through our feelings. Physical demands with the controller and our energy levels, and of course the social demands of other people. And of course, when we're playing video games, when the system challenges are balanced with our skill, one of the things we see is this loss of attention and awareness. What happens neurologically is that the brain's attentional networks and reward networks start to synchronize with each other, which allows us to process the information much more efficiently and perform much better. You've often heard of the autotelic flow state, being in the zone. And one of the things we were wondering then is if these flow states might impact the perceptions we have of the demands of a video game. And to test all of this, we used a lab-created video game called Asteroid Impact. It was developed by Richard Husky at UC Davis. The link on screen if you want more information. Very simple concept. You're a spaceship, and your primary task is to avoid asteroids and collect these different gems that are on screen. And all the while, there's a secondary task, an attentional blink that you're supposed to respond to. So whenever you see this thing blink on screen, your job is to hit the space bar as quickly as possible. These tasks are manipulated through different game settings. So in the boredom condition, we slow down the asteroid so that they're remarkably easy to avoid, and grabbing the gem requires very little effort and the player gets a lot of reward for doing it. And in the frustration condition, we make the asteroids move so quickly that it's nearly impossible to grab these different gems. It's a lot of effort and not a lot of reward. And in the flow condition, the speed of the asteroid is somewhat yoked to the player's performance in a dynamic difficulty adjustment system. For this study, the secondary task is not manipulated at any point, and that's going to become really important later on. We had college students play with moderate gaming experience, and everybody in the study played every condition of the video game. As you'd expect, it's not at all surprising that the cognitive demands were perceived as higher as you went from boring to flow to frustration. And whether you like box plots or confidence intervals, it's the exact same effects. That's supported. For the physical demands, we found some support. The frustrating games were the ones that had the least intuitive controls and took the most amount of physical energy. But we had hoped, for example, that controller demands, controller intuitiveness, would be lowest for the flow condition because people are performing the highest. That didn't quite work out. We actually saw the same linear effect. And for exertional demands, both boredom and flow were equally unexerting. And one reason for some of these artifacts might just be that our control system was so simple that there is a bit of a restriction of range. For example, nobody ever crossed the midpoint of the scale. So even with the restriction of range, we still found that the frustrating game had the least intuitive and most exerting controls, keeping in mind the controls didn't actually change. And so one broad claim we can make is that frustrating game experiences are those that simultaneously overtax cognitive and physical demands. Now, that's not too interesting. What is interesting is an aspect of our data we didn't expect. So we looked a little more closely at these attentional blink reaction times. So for bored folks, they were very quick, right? They had, after navigating the game's primary task, they had more than enough attention left over to respond to that blink. And the flow players were a little slower to respond, and that's not too surprising because they were focused on the primary task of gem collection. So they still got the attentional blinks, but they were slower. Frustrating players were fascinating to us because they started off almost completely ignoring that attentional blink. It was not even possible to respond to this. They gave up pretty quickly, however, on the primary task. They realized it was way too much. It was overtaxing, and they switched their task entirely and focused only on the attentional blink. to the point where they got very quick, very fast, as quick as the bored folks. We talk about the implications of this task switching in our paper. I love to chat more. Our information is on screen, and let's please be in touch. Thank you today for your time. I hope you all have a great conference.